use, they are going to be dope sick. And they are going to do everything they can to prevent that. I never thought that I would watch a video where my son was going through tip envelopes of the coworkers that he thoroughly enjoyed working with. And those envelopes maybe had $2, $3, they might have had $5 in them. And he was going through them because he knew if he did not use, he was going to be dope sick. And he was going to do everything he could in his power to prevent that. This next slide is from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And this scientifically explains what I just basically explained to you in layman's terms. Continued drug use hijacks the brain's communication system by interfering with the way cells send and receive messages. The drugs target the regions of the brain that produce pleasant feelings, overwhelming them and flooding the body with euphoric feelings. Over time, more drugs are needed to achieve the same effects, and pleasures become much more difficult to achieve naturally. For a long time, society viewed addiction as a moral failing. The addict was seen as someone who simply lacked self-control. Just stop. Stop using the drugs. What's the matter with you? Today, thanks to new advances in brain imaging and other technologies, we know that addiction is a disease by profound disruptions of the brain. And that is the National Institute on Drug Abuse. November 9th, I get a phone call from Joe. He's coming home. He's all excited. He's been in rehab about 40 days, maybe 45 days. He asked me what the weather was like. We're in Ohio, he's in California, it's November. I said, it's cold. He told me he had all of his clothes laid out on his bed like he was starting school for the very first day. He was all excited. We went and we picked him up at the Cleveland airport Thursday morning. When we pull into the driveway, I didn't even mention the very first slide. I don't know if you mentioned or if you saw the very first slide. It was a picture of him and his dog. That's his dog, Brooklyn. He got Brooklyn when she was about 8 weeks old. She's a pit bull lab mix. He adored Brooklyn. She's 5 now. We kept Brooklyn the whole time he was gone. So about 52 days he was gone. We pull into the driveway. I said, wait. I said, I want to get my phone out because I want to videotape you reuniting with Brooklyn when you go in the house. And of course, Tom and Joe are like, no. And I'm like, I'm doing it. I am doing it. So this is the video of Joe and Brooklyn reuniting together after about 52 days. For me to watch, although I'm glad that I have it, because he looked really, really good. Really good. That next slide is him holding Brooklyn at our house before he left our house. That Saturday of that week, his sister Jenna found him dead in his apartment. He was all by himself, except for Brooklyn. Brooklyn was with him. Took us about 9 weeks to get actually took us about 12 weeks to get the toxology report back. Yes, he had heroin in his system, but more than that, it was fentanyl. Fentanyl is a prescription medication that is prescribed by physicians for pain relief. About 1 to 2 milligrams of fentanyl is therapeutic. Joe had 33 milligrams of fentanyl in his system. When Jenna opened Joey's bedroom door, he was sitting on the side of his bed. Brooklyn was laying behind him. He didn't try and stand up. He didn't fall forward. He didn't fall backwards. It killed him where he sat on the side of his bed. Now, I'm going to tell you, as his mom, that brings me a certain level of comfort, because I know that he didn't suffer. I know that he didn't suffer. But at the same time, he didn't want to die, and I didn't want him to die. This next slide is Brooklyn and I going to the cemetery to visit his daddy, her daddy. Joey is buried next to his grandma and his grandpa on his dad's side. So we go out there quite often. I told you about his journal. After Joey passed, I started going through it. That's where I found his journal entries. In the last couple pages, he had a list of 8 or 9 guys' names that he must have met in rehab. I really struggled initially, like, do I reach out to them? Do I let them know what happened? But I thought, you know what, if they were important for Joey to write down those names and numbers, then they're important enough for me to reach out. So I text them. One of the guys, his name is Kevin. He actually called me. He said, let me tell you about your son. He said, when I first got to rehab, Joey had been there about a week. He said, I was having the hardest time sleeping. Joey slept on the end of my bed, laying horizontally, so that I knew somebody was there and I could sleep. And then he would wake up the next morning before everybody else, and he would make breakfast for all the guys in the house. I'm going to tell you that is my son. That was his heart. And that was the son that I raised. But the drugs took that. He thought he could handle it. And he lost. And I lost. Big time. When we go into school, we talk to kids, we talk to middle school and high schoolers, and I keep hoping that they'll let us talk to elementary. Tom and I are very adamant about we need to talk with 3rd graders on that. Someday, hopefully, they'll let us do that. But when we talk in schools, we tell kids, don't start. Hashtag don't start. Drugs today will kill you. And as Andrew talked about, we are in the middle of a crisis. And that is because drugs are killing people. And we see that over and over and over again. There is not a group that Tom and I have talked to that has not been affected on some level. So we have got to get a handle on this. So that's what we tell kids. Hashtag don't start. And I'm going to tell you guys as adults, if this is something you even remotely thought about because at times life sucks and you don't like it, don't start, because it will kill you. This next slide, I explained to people, Tom and I both explained to people again, we're in the middle of a crisis. This nightmare, this monster has been dropped in our laps. It's been a progression, and that could be a whole nother in-service, but it's here. And we're all trying to figure it out. And we're all trying to figure out what we can do. I liken this crisis, this epidemic, to a big jigsaw puzzle that's right now, all the pieces are just laying on a cardboard table. And we're trying to put this puzzle together. And what do when you're doing a jigsaw puzzle? You pick up pieces and you start putting it together. If you have a better understanding today because of what I've shared about the disease of addiction, and it is not a moral failing, and we have got to stop judging people and thinking that they're lesser than less, then that's your puzzle piece. You now understand that this is a brain disease, that addiction is a disease, and people lose, and they lose their lives. That's your puzzle piece. Pick it up, talk at your card club, talk in your bowling league, talk in your dart league, talk to your coworkers, talk to your neighbors, talk to your church members. Talk, talk, talk. And eventually, we will see this epidemic, this crisis end. Tom and I also say we will never end this on the supply side because it's deep and it's big and there's a lot of money to be made by it and it's devastating. But we can end it on the demand side. And what does that mean? We talk to kids, we talk to people, we help them understand you cannot use drugs. They will kill you. Tom's going to share some statistics and then we'll open it up if we have time to some questions.
In 2015, in the state of Ohio, there were 3,050 deaths due to overdoses. In 2016, that number rose to 4,149 deaths. In 2017, we have not received the coroner office official numbers yet, but it's predicted that it'll be 30 to 35% higher, which will put it up into the 5,000 person range here in the state of Ohio. In 2016, in the United States, there were over 64,000 overdoses due to drugs. Just to put that in perspective, Sandusky County, there's about 57,000 residents in Sandusky County. That'd be like eliminating the full county here in Ohio. Huron County has about 55,000. So the numbers are staggering. And it just goes to show that there is no control on it now. We're losing. We were just at an opioids conference last week speaking, and we heard one statistic. There's 14 deaths a day from overdoses in the state of Ohio, and in 2017 there were over 83,000 people transported to hospitals because of overdoses. They didn't die, not all of them died from it, but there was 83,000 people transported just in the state of Ohio. So, when you start thinking about numbers like that, you can see, how bad it is. And Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, Northern Kentucky were kind of the epicenter for this crisis. So I want to thank you and open it up to questions. Don't be afraid to ask us any questions. We've talked to fifth graders, and let me tell you, they're uncensored, so they ask anything. So don't hesitate. Yes, sir.
My son graduated in 2017 from Woodville High School, Woodville, Illinois.
Yeah.
And what I understand, they really went through a real bad heroin epidemic.
Repeat his question, sir.
His son graduated from Woodmore in 2017, and he said that from what he understands is that there's a lot of heroin problems. See, one thing that society's changed a lot over the past 20, 30, 40 years, and you guys have all heard it, and there's a lot of studies out there of why the heroin epidemic is as bad as it is. We always say there's three reasons. One is over-medication from doctors for pain, pain relievers, OxyContin, Vicodin, Percocet. That's one way that people get addicted. Second way is that usually there's a dual diagnosis where there's a mental illness and people self-medicate them. ADHD. A lot of doctors diagnose and start treating patients, and that can be a cause to it. And the third is the party plan. Kids go to parties. We've seen it. We've heard a lot of it. Is where kids will go into their parents' medicine cabinets, grab whatever they can find, and they'll take it to a party. They throw these pills into a bowl, and they'll have somebody go in and start taking pills, and somebody will be there. They're called resurrection parties. Somebody will be there with Narcan or naloxone. If they should overdose, they bring them back from it. So, even a kid going in, say junior high, going to a party where there's a bunch of high school kids, he feels a lot of peer pressure, wants to fit in, and all of a sudden they have him smoking pot. Well, that all of a sudden now pot's being laced with heroin. So it doesn't take long for a young mind, 1 or 2 times using heroin, that they have that addiction to it. So yes, there is a lot of problems in high schools in that age. And I've said it before, is that we're losing a whole generation right now of kids. There's a generation that we're losing because of the drug overdoses. Thank you.
A couple things that I did want to add. The reason why 64,000 people can die in the United States due to an overdose of heroin or opiates is because of the stigma surrounding it. People still judge, and they have a stigma, they attach a stigma to people who are struggling with substance use, and they believe that they are the lesser of the less. And there's not a big uproar. If this was an outbreak of some communicable disease, Ebola, something like that, we would have massive breakout and massive attempts to try and get a hold on this. There are changes being made. They're somewhat slow, but they're being made. But that's why 64,000 people can die and there's not a whole lot of uproar, because of the stigma. We have got to stop that. Joey was a beautiful young man. Now, of course, I'm going to say that because he was my son, but he was funny. He had a great... Did you know Joey? Yes. See, he knew him. He thought he could handle it. Zach Thurn. I love Zach Thurn to pieces. He thought he could handle it. Now, Zach is still with us, but he thought he could handle it. There are probably, I could ask you to say, hey, who do you know? And you could say they thought they could handle it. It is not a moral failing. These people have value. They are loved, and we have got to stop it. And I hope that that's a puzzle piece that you pick up. And you stand tall, and you stand loud and proud for people who are struggling, and help them. Another puzzle piece is you have got to love people where they're at. This life sucks at times, and there's nobody in this room who would deny that. So and we all come with messiness. When I was raised in a home with both parents being alcoholics, I didn't have the best life. I didn't have the best childhood. I didn't go to school with the best clothes. My mom and dad could barely get themselves out of bed. I was bullied. I was picked on. I had to figure that out. But you know what? I can't remember anybody coming alongside me and loving me right where I wanted, or right where I was. And that's what I wanted. Now somehow I figured it out, and for some reason I was not genetically pulled into the disease of addiction, although everybody in my family was. But nobody came alongside me and told me as a child that it was going to be okay. Although I wanted it to be okay. So we have got to love people right where they're at with all the messiness that they have in your life. There is not one person sitting here that does not have messiness, including myself. So stand tall and loud and proud. And benefit of these people that are struggling, and understand that it is a disease and they did not choose it. They Joey chose the party plan. He chose it, yes. But so did so many other kids. He just happened to get addicted. But he even thought he could handle it. He obviously came to a point in his life where he knew he couldn't handle it, because when I said you need rehab, he said, yeah, you're right, I do. So he figured it out, but he still wanted to handle it. So it's all over the place, and that's why we need to talk. And as a parent, people have asked me, Tom said some 5th graders, one of the best questions came from a 5th grader, and he said, do you have any regrets? You betcha I have regrets. One of my biggest regrets is I did not take Joey's partying more serious, and I did not talk with him more. I did not approach him more. I thought he would outgrow it, and I thought it was no big deal. If you think there's a problem, there's a problem, and address it. Any other questions? No, you guys have got to have questions. Gosh, you're a quiet group.
What's that?
How come the person only goes into that Narcan 4 or 5, 6 times?
Why did they Narcan 4, 5, 6 times?
Same person, the person only goes, it's more than it's
Right. First of all, when somebody overdoses and the first responders come on scene, the first responders are hired and they take an oath that they're going to do everything they can to help someone who is in medical distress. So when they show up, that same person could be laying on the ground for the 15th time. It is their job and their I would hope moral responsibility, but certainly their responsibility to revive them. If somebody has diabetes and they know that they should not be eating donuts or they should not be eating crappy food, and they choose to do that, and they go into diabetic coma because of the choices they made, and first responders show up, they're going to give them the same medical assistance. I'm not God. You're not God. There's nobody in this room that's God. And we have so many people in recovery that it was the 9th time that they were Narcaned, that they finally said, I get it, and I need help. And there's a lot of people in recovery that are now walking alongside others and helping them in their recovery. So every person has value. I'm not going to stand up here and say, you have value, and you have value, and you have value, and then you're laying on the ground and you need Narcan and I'm not going to administer it. Boy, talk about hypocritical. Every person in this room has value. We all make poor choices. And if I'm laying on the ground in a diabetic coma, by God, I hope that somebody gives me some insulin. Did that answer your question? Thank you. That's a great question. It comes up all the time. Anybody else? Thank you very much. I'm very fortunate. Tom and I are very fortunate and thankful to be able to present this. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for presenting that. I know that can't possibly be easy to share that story, so we appreciate that. If there's anything that I want you guys to take away from this, is that it can happen to anybody, poor, wealthy, middle class, it doesn't matter. And that if you know somebody, friend, family, loved one, or maybe you're even suffering right now from addiction, there is help out there. So please try as hard as you can to get that help. Tom and Lavin will be around for a while, so if you do have a question that you didn't feel comfortable asking in front of everybody, please stop up and see them. Other than that, and you have some perfect attendance things to give out, and then we'll get you guys on your way.
Okay.